vital signs to navigate, as I spent a lot of time just wandering, whether on horseback or on foot. I realized that I had no recollection of that part of the path and had been walking along in silence for... Well, that's the weird part. Out came my phone and it showed me the time. 14:37, 2:37. I had absolutely no signal, even though it is usually spot on there. We had set off at 11 in the morning, and all the hairs on my body were now standing up. This was a short walk, an hour and a half at most, from leaving the car to getting back to it. The sun should have been above us, but it was sat off at where I would have said 3 o'clock for that time of year. I remember the time because when I turned to ask my mom what time she had, she looked straight through me, like I wasn't even there. And she remained like that for a whole 3 minutes. My mom was just staring off into space, the space where I had been to her left, just staring off into nothing. At 14:40, she suddenly came back to life. I'd had to move away. Because I was too nervous to remain under her gaze like that. After about a minute of saying, "Mom, Mom, Mom," and nudging her rigid shoulder in a building childlike panic, even though I was 20. I was sat on a log just off the path, getting pretty bloody freaked out. Mom glanced around and she said in a hollow, weird voice, quote, "I think the fairies might have us. We need to keep walking," unquote. The fairies. I scrambled up and I fell into match. I scrambled and I matched her determined stride on this unfamiliar path. Why fairies, Mom? Why would you say that? I was not raised to see fairies as little cutesy people with wings. You see, to me, fairies are straight out of nightmares. Because my mother's upbringing said that's what they are. They are creatures out to confuse and trick you. I asked my mom, "What time does your watch say?" She always wears a battery-operated analog watch, and she lifted her wrist. 2:45. She put her wrist down and lifted it again to check, asking, quote, "That time's not right, is it?" unquote. I just shook my head and I said, "All right, we I knew we were in bother. I knew we were in bother when my stalwart, never frightened of anything mother, began to get nervous. So in response to her nerves, she then becomes pissed off. She steeled herself, lifted those proud, all-seeing gypsy eyes. She lifted them to the creamy atmosphere and spoke as she would to a lurking human. She said, quote, "Who is toying with us? Put us back," unquote. There was what I can only describe as a burst of deep, deep laughter coming from the path behind us, and we spun around to face it. We were at the top of the hill that led to the gate out of there. It's at the fork where you can go left or right, neither of which I remember choosing, even though we always make a discussion of it. We made our way down the slope and out of the woods as calmly as possible, and we got back to the car, which was parked next to an ancient church and cemetery. The time in the car read 17:12. 5:12. We should have gotten back to the car no later than maybe 1:45 if the walk had gone normally, or just after 4 when our watch and phone said that we were approaching there. Oh my god, we lost nearly 5 hours of time. 5 hours that cannot be accounted for. That is so creepy. I have had a lot of creepy things happen to me, but this is about one of the worst. I wasn't alone. It was in the middle of the day on a usually familiar path. Where did those hours go? Where was that path? What were we on? So many unanswerable questions. I even went up there alone once to see if I could experience it again, but nothing happened. Okay, this is from the same person. I was out riding my horse alone, which is not uncommon. I have ridden forever. When suddenly a pheasant spooked my horse. I was taken by surprise, and before I could correct myself, I was thrown into and tumbled over a dry stone wall. I smashed my head and I blacked out as far as I could tell. I woke up and I tried to move. My horse was free by then, and if he ran, I would have been devastated, and also about 10 miles from home without any alternative but walking back. This is where everything started to get weird. Don't move yet. I've got him, and I've got you too. I know the woods and heath up there like the back of my hand, and it just was not possible. I took a few shortcuts, jumping walls and fences, risking an angry farmer or two, but cutting off a few 100 yards of riding. Yet, whilst a bit of me was panicking at the feeling, for the most part, I actually felt kind of protected. The voice had been so kind sounding. And anyway, that didn't matter because I had imagined it, right? I had to have imagined it. As home appeared in my line of sight, I was walking down the road to cool my horse down. Through the sound of my horse's hoof falls, I heard sudden human running, like office shoes on tarmac. It slowed to a walk as my horse skittered forwards. He was reacting to that sound coming from behind us. I went to turn in the saddle when I heard the voice. It said, quote, "Don't turn around. You're home safe now, and I've already done. No matter. I cleaned your face up, but that cut on your head is nasty, so best get it checked out. All right." Unquote. I got the horse under control in a moment and I turned around. But there was not anybody there. No one could have hidden so quickly, not without Beast hearing them dive into the hedge or the undergrowth. And if they had run off, I would have been able to see them running. I just went into the yard, sorted the house out in a daze, and I went into the house. No one was home, so I went to the bathroom mirror to see the damage. The blood from my nose was indeed wiped up. I could see the marks of the smudges, like wiping it away with a tissue would make. The cut was on my forehead, and I still have a dent today. still somewhat knowledgeable of the outdoors. My family used to own a cabin in northwest Wisconsin. I basically grew up there in the summer. I knew the woods well, but at nighttime, it was wise to stay in the cabin, or at least by the bonfire by the beach, because of bears, wolves, and cougars. One of the creepiest things was, if you were having a bonfire, the tree line was visible from the fire pit and beach, and at night, you always felt like you were being watched from that tree line. But during the day, the woods always seemed normal, not so creepy. That is, of course, until this incident. So this happened somewhere between 12 and 2 o'clock. Me and my cousin were having an airsoft battle. I was in full woodland camo. He was not. I retreated onto the ATV trail into the woods for a tactical advantage, and our battle took us about 200 meters in to about a third of the way up the trail. We had enough at this point, and we were standing at the edge of a clearing on the trail, talking, and he was maybe 10 feet from me. And this is when I decided to mess with him. I shushed him, and I said, "We're being watched." He froze, and then I realized that the woods were dead quiet. And I got spooked, and I started scanning the tree line and the other edge of the clearing from left to right. And that was when I saw it. Its teeth gave it away. It was panting and staring at my cousin. I don't expect you to believe me, but what I saw was a wolf as big as a black bear. A wolf that was at least 300 pounds. But it was not a normal wolf. This thing was on 2 legs, crouching next to the tree with its arm grasping onto the tree trunk, grasping it with a clawed hand. It had reddish brown fur. I told my cousin, "We have to go." And next thing I know, he is sprinting, and I look back at Wolfie, who had locked onto him and sprinted a few steps on 2 feet. Alice's description is silly, but it is a werewolf or the Dogman. Okay, growing up, our house was very, very haunted. And even though it is not as active today, I still get creeps sometimes when I go home to visit. A few years before I was born, my great-grandmother died in what would become my bedroom. It was her sitting TV room, and my parents and I both remember walking into that room and very clearly smelling rose-scented perfume. It was like somebody had dumped a bottle of it onto the carpet. According to my parents, it was the same kind of perfume that she wore almost daily up until she died. I have seen apparitions was when I learned about Grandma Mickey. Sitting in my room late at night, late teens, so circa 98, 99, I was listening to music on my computer using headphones. Nobody else is up. I feel the room suddenly grow incredibly cold. It was summertime in Southern California, so the nights were super muggy to the point where I am shivering. Then I feel a hand rest firmly on my shoulder, and another feels like it hits me on the back between my shoulders, so much that I physically shifted in my chair. I promptly ripped my headphones out, and I went and I slept on the couch under more than enough blankets. I heard sweating is supposed to be good for the skin anyway. So my aunt's house is haunted. She moved there when my cousin was about 2. She knew that it was haunted instantly, but stayed because the ghosts were not malicious. My cousin, now about 30, grew up there knowing that it was haunted, as well as my 2 younger cousins. They talked about it so nonchalant, like it was just part of their daily routine. I am way into the spooky stuff, so hearing this, and again at family functions, I asked to spend the night specifically to listen for the ghosts. I was around 17. Here is exactly what happened that night. My cousin, my aunt, and my aunt's friend were watching Carrie. It's wintertime, and all week their fireplace had not been working. My cousin says out loud, quote, "When is this movie going to be scary?" Unquote. Just then, the glass patio door in the kitchen opens up. After the movie, we go into the hot tub because we were cold. After a while in there, we come back inside and the fireplace is blasting full heat out of it. My aunt laughs it off as the ghost messing with us, saying they play pranks like that a lot, apparently. After everyone is asleep, I am on the couch and my cousin is on the floor next to me. I hear from the basement footsteps. I hear from the basement footsteps coming up the stairs. The basement door is visible from where I am laying. I hear the steps come all the way up the stairs, and they stop at the top. I am beyond terrified, and I expect somebody to come from the door. But there's nothing. A moment passes, and then I hear the steps go back downstairs. This starts to repeat, with something going up and down the stairs. I wake up This went on for about 30 minutes, up and down the stairs. I was mortified. Nope. Nope. When I was a baby, we lived in this big old manor house with my grandparents. One day, my dad woke up in the middle of the night to see what looked like a ghost of my mom on top of the bed. She was screaming and trying to get into my mom's sleeping body. She was trying to get into my mom's body. It freaked him out so much that he refused to ever go back to that house, and we moved out. When I was about 6, we had moved out of that house and we had our own apartment. One morning, just after we woke up, my mom went to go and make a warm cup of milk for both of us. It was winter and the lights were off in the room, but they were on in the corridor. I can remember vividly seeing the dust come together and a ghost in the form of my mom, but dressed like she was from the 1800s, came together, and it walked out of the room following after my mom and not acknowledging me in any way. This was the most surreal thing that I have ever seen, and I can still vividly remember it. I don't like that. So my colleague used to work in a hospital and would often receive phone calls around 3 in the morning, but no one would ever speak at the other end of the receiver. The number was from an extension somewhere in the hospital, and when they looked it up, it was coming from an old morgue that nobody had used in a while. So it's about 4 a.m. and the beach was a ways away, and my dad and I woke up to go surfing. We make our coffee, we turn off all of the lights downstairs, and we leave through our garage door. We close the garage and we start backing out before we realize that we forgot something. We pull the truck back into the driveway, open the garage to find the door going into the house wide open, and there are sleeping bags and other stuff on the ground in front of the door. We walk inside and every single light downstairs is turned on. At this point, I was thinking, oh, what the hell is going on? Because we literally walked out of the house with all of the lights off. My dad and I go to check if my mom is awake, and she is completely asleep upstairs with the door closed. It was so weird. Our first thought was that maybe an intruder got into the house and was trying to leave when we noticed that we were awake, but all of the doors were locked. I don't like that. look